Tell you what, this is an awesome crowd. Hey, thank you very, very much for coming out. I'm Congresswoman Cheri Bustos. I am from the state of Illinois. We have any Illinoisans here? In spirit? All right. I want to thank all of the colleagues of mine who I'm standing with for working together to introduce a better deal to ensure hardworking men and women who have paid into a pension can collect the benefits you have earned. So the folks behind me, they'll get into the nuts and bolts of what we're talking about today. I think many of you have heard what we're talking about today. But if I may, I'd like to share with you a story. And I know you could all tell your own stories. But I'm going to share with you a story about a woman who lives in my congressional district. Her name is Denise Whitley, and she lives in a town called East Moline, Illinois, which is where I raised my 3 boys. It's a town of 21,000 people. So even though Denise was a single mom, she had an ex-husband who she says did not pay regular child support. But even with that, she never had to take any government assistance. Instead, what she did is she worked very hard for 32.5 years as a billing clerk to earn her pension. She bought a home because of that. She raised her daughter. She did everything she could to make sure that her family was taken care of and that when she retired, she'd have a decent pension. She was responsible. She was a contributing member of our community and lived by the rules like all you folks right here in this room. But what happened even while she was working, several times she had to negotiate away her raises that she would get so a little bit more could be paid into her pension. Anybody relate to that? Okay. So what happened then as a result? She turns 53 years old, and all of a sudden she's forced into retirement. Ring a bell with anybody? And it was not by her choice. So here's what's going on today with her. She's about ready to turn 60 years old. She's now working a minimum wage job. She's ushering people to their seats at our local civic center. She's also working for a tow company. So that's what she's doing to make ends meet because her pension is still getting cut. In fact, it was cut most recently by $450 a month. Okay? So these are cuts, though, if this other plan went through, and you've probably all thought through this scenario of what this would lead to. She believes that it would lead for her to her having to seek low-income housing, make her health care unaffordable, cuts that she said in a letter to me that would force her to work until her dying day. She said it would lead to her being poor as a church mouse. So it sounds like a pretty raw deal to me, right? So what we're up here to tell you today is that we've got a better deal that honors your work that you put in. And of all days today, the House members up here, we're going to take a pretty tough vote today. It's easy for the Democrats to vote no to this tax deal, but it draws a distinct difference between what our belief system is. You know, we believe, all of those of us standing up here, we believe that seniors should be able to retire with dignity, right? You know, there's other folks, they believe that seniors should be forced into debt. We believe that we should be standing up for hardworking families and people like you. They believe in raising taxes to the tune of 36 million hardworking Americans. We believe that responsible leadership means fighting for better jobs, better wages, and a better future. So with that, I think you will see that the difference is very clear. And I'm very, very honored to be standing in front of each and every one of you, and I'm also very honored to be standing with my colleagues. With that, I'd like to turn this over to a gentleman who fights every single day for hardworking men and women, Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio.
Cheri, thank you. Cheri's not been in Congress a long time, but she has made an impact already, and thank you for that. This is a really, really, really big deal. as you know. This is the United States Congress making sure that this country honors the work you do, that we honor work, that we look at American workers as the backbone of this economy, and that we reward the work you did by making sure that your pensions are what you were told they would be as you work for 20 and 30 and 40 and 45 years. So thank you to all of you who are here. This is, I would say, and Leader Pelosi has been a mentor to me, as she has to so many, and I have been in small groups with her over the years and heard her talk about her grandchildren especially. And I would say in my 10 plus years in the Senate that this moment today, except for the birth of each of my 6 grandchildren, this moment today is the best day I will have had in the U.S. Senate because of what we are doing to make sure that we honor work and we restore these pensions. So thank you for that. I thank Leader Pelosi and in the Senate, Leader Schumer, who was called away at the last minute. I just talked to him. But his commitment to making this the top economic priority for this Democratic caucus is strong and is solid. As Leader Pelosi, we met just a week ago again talking to us about this. I want to acknowledge one of my favorite members of Congress who comes from my state, Marcy Kaptur in Toledo. And Marcy, I learned my first year in Congress, I worked with Marcy, and she taught me a lot about trade, and we helped to lead the charge against the North American Free Trade Agreement. I learned a lot of that from Marcy. Congressman Northcroft, thank you for what you're doing. Congressman Scott, who came to the House the same year as I did. Congresswoman Dingell, Congressman Nolan, thank you for your being here and being part of this too. And one of my best friends in the Senate and one of the most committed pro-labor members of the United States Senate. And there's a lot of you from Wisconsin because I'm running into you all the time in the hallways. And keep doing it, Tammy Baldwin. Thank you for the work that you do. But this is, this and Richie Neal as the co-author of this bill, and he's really been the leader in the House on this, and we will continue to work together in this. But this bill, it's not about Marcy, it's not about Richie, it's not about Nancy or Chuck or any of us. This bill is about you, the men and women who traveled here today, the men and women who didn't just travel here today, Rita, but the men and women who have been here day after day, week after week, month after month, honoring the legacy of Butch Lewis. And I'll get to that in a moment, but honoring that legacy and making this fight, because this, remember, there's a lot of members of Congress. Everybody up here is on your side and will always be on your side, but there are a whole lot of members of Congress that need a little bit of persuasion, shall we say, and we need a lot of you to show up. Show up in mine worker shirts, show up in Teamster shirts, show up in baker and confectionery workers. This is Rita's granddaughter, more on her in a second. And being here and being the activist you are is so important. Now, we who understand the labor movement, and everybody up here understands the labor movement. That's why they're here. That's why they come to work every day. That's why most of them ran for office. We who understand the labor movement understand what Cheri said, and that is that when you are at the bargaining table, when you're bargaining, whether you're a Teamster or a mine worker or any other labor union, when you're at the bargaining table, you give up dollars today so you'll have health care and you'll have a secure retirement. It's sort of labor economics 101, but a whole hell of a lot of members of Congress don't really understand that and don't understand you have given up something today. That's why that needs to be assured and insured that it'll be there in 10 years and 20 years and 30 years. I was at Teamsters Local 377 in Youngstown this past week. A gentleman named Ed Barker said to me, we did our part, now it's time for members of Congress to cross party lines and do theirs. And that's why your being here matters, not just to kind of cheer and be here today. What really matters is that you, after you leave today, that you fan out across this Congress and keep the pressure on. Keep the pressure, especially on Republicans. This isn't partisan, but to keep the pressure. I mean, Tammy and I are working the Democrats in the Senate. They're there. We think every one of them is there, and we know everyone will be there in the end. Nancy and Richie are working in the House, and Cheri and others. We know they'll be here too, but we need help, obviously, across the aisle. Now, I want to introduce two very special people here today. Butch Lewis worked 40 years as an Ohio Teamster. If he were here today, Butch would tell you he didn't work those 40 years to get just 40% of his pension. Butch couldn't be here because he passed away, basically in this battle. Butch worked so hard and put his health and his future at stake because he was working for Teamsters and electricians and mine workers and bakers and confection workers all over the country. Butch died a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. Butch would be so proud of how his wife took up this fight, how Rita took up this fight. Rita has her son and daughter-in-law and daughter here, and her two beautiful granddaughters who unfortunately live in Indiana, but they are here too. But they live really close in Ohio, so maybe, who knows? And then I'm also, after Rita speaks, my longtime friend David Dilly will be here, and David, where'd David go? David's over here. Now, David, as you'll notice, David has a Vietnam veteran's hat on. I look around here at the number of veterans. Yes. Who had an Air Force? You had an Air Force? Somebody had an Air Force shirt? I look at the number of veterans. When you think of mine workers and you think of Teamsters, there's probably almost nobody in the country that has had more of their members stand up and fight for our country. So thank you for what they all do and you all do. Dave, as young as he looks, had 4 older brothers who served in Korea, right? And Dave was just, I'm proud to say, and this is perfect timing that we did this week rather than last. This past weekend, Dave was inducted into the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame. So, David, thank you. And my honor to bring forward Rita and David both, if you would come forward, Rita.
Thank you all. Thank you all elected officials and representatives. And I am in awe of all of you here to show up and show support. And I am in awe of all my Teamster retiree families who have stood behind me and supported me and gave me strength on my darkest days when I lost my husband. And I didn't think I could go on any further. But having said that, I want to thank, and with great admiration, Senator Brown and his brilliant staff, especially Gideon Bragan, who I have a special affinity for. And if I miss anyone, I deeply apologize. But I have to thank, too, the IBT for providing buses and lunches for our retirees so that they could be here today. I'm honored and so very proud to have the distinguished honor to speak and represent the echoing voices of 500,000 of my retiree families on this historical day of Thursday, November 16, 2017. Retirees who have suffered through 4 years of mental and physical anguish since we received that letter, October 2014, and it robbed us of our peace of mind. We've suffered divorces, fractured friendships, stress-induced illnesses, deaths, and one suicide that I'm aware of. No one should ever have to die for a pension that they were worked for and they were promised. Thanks to Senator Brown and Congressman Neal, who have listened and responded to our concerns, our fears, and our insufferable anguish about the security of our pensions. I proudly stand in honor in the birthing of the Butch Lewis Act of 2017. I just want you all to know that the bill may carry his name, but please know that each and every one of you played a part in this bill, and this bill is just as much yours, and it should be named in memory of all of you and everything that you have done for us. Thanks to the ardent efforts of Senator Brown and Congressman Neal, the passage of this act will secure the pension we worked for, we paid for, and we were promised. This is not and should never be called a bailout or a handout.
Thank you.
We pay for our pension. We paid for our pensions through dedication to our employers while we created profits for them and we protected the viability of our pensions. This bill must be passed by the end of this year. Amen. Please just pass it. We've had and experiencing excruciating 4 years of waiting for a solution. And thanks to Senator Brown and Congressman Neal, we have a sound solution. Without the passage of this bill, our nation will suffer an economic tsunami of which the likes of this nation has never seen. For you see, we retirees, we drive this country by our spending dollars. Our spending dollars support local, state, and federal taxes. We support businesses, charities, and many other entities through our volunteerism. And should these cuts take place, businesses and other entities, you're going to have to hire employees to take our place. And this is going to have effect on your bottom line. These cuts will have an unstoppable impact because we'll no longer be able to pay our mortgages, we won't be able to supply our basic needs, and we're eventually going to be sitting on the federal government's doorstep, and they're going to be paying the bill. We have been overlooked and underestimated as a viable financial asset. We spend our dollars taking care of aging parents, helping our children who are forced to work in an economy where 2 incomes are the norm to survive, as well as periodically helping them financially. And many of us look after our grandchildren during the day to save our children the expense of daycare. We are an asset to be invested in. And should you choose not to support this legislation, and I'm hoping that we can win more Republicans and sway them to our side, I can honestly say the future of this nation is going to rest on your shoulders. Congress voted at the 11th hour in December 2014 to cut our pensions without any input from the people it affects the most, we the retirees of this nation. We fought your wars, we supported your economy, and even when you outsourced and moved many of our industries overseas, we still stayed true to the American spirit of supporting this country and this economy. It's now time to do the right thing and rectify the disastrous mistake that was made on that fateful December evening. This is not a partisan issue. We're Republicans, we're Democrats, and we're independents. We're your constituents, whom you asked for our votes, and you made promises that you were going to represent us, and you didn't. But we are the American retirees of this nation. We expect you to live up to your promises to represent us, and we ask for nothing less. If our nation has billions of dollars to give to our foreign entities and enemies and nations who despise us, then for the love of God, you must take a stand and do the right thing and pass this bill without a second thought. Guys, I'm getting near the end. I just want to tell you a little bit about my husband. My late husband took a stand, and although he's not here today, in part because of the crisis, he gave us all to this fight, to his fellow retirees. He was a man of selflessness, integrity, compassion, honor, who fought for justice even when it was unpopular. He had a love of life and love for his fellow man, and he touched the lives of all who loved him. He gave his life in service to his country, and now he has to fight, and he had to maintain a fight to attain an unimaginable feat to fight for what was rightfully ours. He immediately formed a committee in Cincinnati with the help of NUCPP President Mike Walden. He's a Vietnam vet. He's our leader, and in the past he has admitted that he's been diagnosed and suffering from the effects of Agent Orange. My husband respected and admired Mike for his dedication and intelligence, and believe me, those two were a force to be reckoned with. Unfortunately, that relationship was short-lived to my husband's shocking and untimely death. And Mike soldiered on alone for over a year to build our committees and grow an army to fight this fight of securing our pension. And even though my life will never be the same again, I want my retiree family to have the retirement they worked for and they dreamed of. And to say to anyone within the sound of my voice, no one should ever have to die for a pension they worked for and were promised. And no one should ever make an egregious living managing a pension they never worked for.
Thank God.
And in closing, we've been held hostage long enough. It's time to come together and pass this bill by year's end. We're holding you accountable because a promise is a promise is a promise. Thank you all.
I'm Dave Dilly. I'm from the great state of Ohio. I grew up in the great state of West Virginia, but I'm from the United States of America. And being a Vietnam veteran, I got to tell you, sitting up here, my instinct is to run and hide. All the cameras is pointing at me, but my courage comes from knowing what's right. What's right is this pension bill that's being presented. I stand here, 87,000 pensioners stand to lose their pension. And that's why it gives me the courage to stand here instead of all my instincts to run. Whenever I was in Vietnam, we were fighting for the right to run for office, for the right to vote. And we're hoping that the people that are elected by us do the right thing by passing this bill. And I'm in awe of all the people that have been a part of this, because it takes everybody, partisans, everybody, whether you're Republicans, Democrats, or whatever. It is absolutely the right thing to do. I look back at the people that in my area that I know real well. We don't, as mine workers, we don't get a lot of pension. The average pension is only $580 a month. But that means a lot to us. And it means so much to a lot of the ones out there that are trying to struggle as it is. Basically, the only thing they've got is Social Security. And trying to make it determine, in fact, whether you're going to buy your medication or what are we going to do? Food. It's tough. So to take that away is almost criminal. And it would leave so many of those without hope, without what are you going to go from there, And it's not like it was given to them. Myself, I worked 19 years in mine. There's a lot of guys worked a lot longer than I did in mine, or a lot older. They can't be here. So I'm here. I'm their voice and their legs. I don't know that I'm the best voice or the legs, but I'm here. But for those guys that can't make it, they can't go out. They can't even. A lot of them can't even stand at a grocery store and be a greeter. They can't. They can't. They're too old. And the work was hard, and it was a dangerous work, and it left you with a lot of physical problems. There's so many of the miners that I know that the distance that we walked today to get here, there's absolutely no way they could have made it. So I'm honored to be able to be a voice of the coal miners, and also being with the Teamsters, because I have the utmost respect for those guys and what they've done. We have joined with Senator Brown. This bill is it is so important to all of us. So I just hope that every one of you that knows anyone, get out there and bring the votes in. Try to get this bill passed, hopefully this year, because it's something it's the right thing to do. It's the right time to do it. So thank you very much.
Hi,
I'm Rich Neal from Massachusetts, and I've been working with Senator Brown on this legislation, and actually the impetus on the House side came from Nancy. She got after me. This has really been going on for a while. We've been talking about this for a long period of time. And just a couple of thoughts. The average Social Security benefit for all the talk about Social Security is a little over $15,000 a year, average. So that means a little bit more than maybe $300 a week. Nobody gets rich on Social Security. But I can tell you this, you can outlive an annuity, but you can't outlive Social Security. And when you consider that retirement is based upon a three-legged stool, right? Some personal savings, the bedrock guarantee of Social Security, which has never missed a payment to one person, incidentally, and a pension, a contract you signed up for at the early stages of life. And the great thing about the pension system in America is that we all pull the wagon in our youth because we might have to sit in the wagon in our aged years.
Absolutely.
That's the way retirement works, and it's also the basis of community. So as we've worked on this legislation, let me give you a quick synopsis. I'm managing the Democratic tax side in the House, and we're almost through it today, but I want to tell you, that's something you need to pay attention to as well, based on distribution tables, because you're going to have some money left to deal with these sorts of issues. So we specifically propose that within the Department of Treasury, and I did talk early on to Secretary Mnuchin about the problem, not about the legislation yet, though, the Pension Rehabilitation Administration. It will be a new agency within the Department of Treasury that will be authorized to issue bonds in order to finance loans to critical and declining status multi-employer pension plans, plans that have suspended benefits and some recently insolvent plans currently receiving financial assistance from the PBGC. Now, the President will appoint the director, but the director will have the power to appoint deputy directors and officers within the Department of Treasury. The director will have the power to contract for financial and actuarial services because the bonds will have to have grade A status. There's a fiduciary responsibility that would be included, but the Secretary of the Treasury would then be authorized to issue bonds and use the proceeds to make loans to multi-employer pension plans that have been approved by the Pension Rehabilitation Administration. Now, that's a bit of a synopsis, but we've just gotten done with an argument here about keeping 401k plans. We just stopped the changes that were being proposed to 401k plans here. You can't fool around with retirement. You know, at Enron, one of the great ironies, on a Monday morning, Enron was the 7th largest company in America. On Friday, it was gone, and the people at the top kept their retirement benefits, and the people at the bottom did not get their retirement benefits. So we came to the aid here not long ago of the financial sector in America, and what we want is a path here to resolve this sort of an issue. But now you've got a vehicle. You've got an actual piece of legislation filed. And the key to it is, for all of you now, you've got to get after members of Congress and Republican members of Congress. After all, they represent some of you too. And you've got to make that request because we want this to be a vehicle that comes to the aid of your retirement plan. And then we're going to have some help from the administration on this as well. But you do have a starting opportunity. You have a path here now. There is a piece of legislation, and we're going to go gung-ho on it. And I just want to say again, Leader Pelosi, she's the one that encouraged me, because I've spent a career on working on retirement legislation, and she's the one that encouraged me to get after this. So I'm indeed grateful for it. And if you don't mind, I am going to go back and manage that side of the bill. Thank you all.
Look out for it.
I'm Tammy Baldwin. I hail from the great state of Wisconsin. There's a few Wisconsinites in the House. You know, I've been listening carefully to everyone's remarks today. When Sherrod Brown said that aside from the birth of his grandchildren, that this is one of the biggest days of his political life, I get that. This is really an important moment. And I want to just reflect on where we were, where we are right now, and where we still have to go. You know, a little over a year ago, Central States Pension had an application before the Treasury Department. which would have put into effect, if approved, deep cuts right away. Now, a lot of us weighed in with the Treasury Department, and in the end, you know that that application was rejected. That was a, yes. And that was an important short-term victory. But everybody knew that there was more work to be done, that we had to find a path to a long-term solution that kept promises, the promises that Rita and Dave just so eloquently spoke about. And a lot of effort has gone into that. Now, I will be the first to thank my colleagues for all the hard work that we've all put in together. But what I really want to do is thank you, who perhaps never saw yourselves as being citizen lobbyists and political activists and policy nerds. I just had somebody explain the intricacies of this bill to me like I have never seen. They've read every word of it, understand its impact. In my home state, it has been just such a joy to work with the leaders of the movement to fix this. And I've had a chance to join meetings in Milwaukee, in Endeavor, Wisconsin, in Green Bay, Wisconsin, you know, expecting maybe 40, 50 retirees to show up, and coming into union halls and meeting places with 200, 300, 3,500 people. In a blizzard, Bob. You know, just on that point, if you can't make it through a blizzard to meet with Teamsters, you know, that's a real problem, right? So we made it. We made it. It's a big day, and when I was talking earlier with Wisconsinites who are here for this big moment, there's a lot of emotion, as you can imagine. But this too is a first step, because as you've been hearing, we have a tall order to get it through both houses of Congress and onto the president's desk. I am so pleased to be with all of you as we introduce formally the Butch Lewis Act. And I look forward to every step that we're going to take together to get over the finish line. But this is really what it's about. It's about hardworking Americans recognizing that this government is yours, and being active and speaking out and sharing your powerful stories. Thank you for being here, and we're going to work together really hard until we celebrate crossing the finish line. And next, I want you to hear from Representative Bobby Scott.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy, and thank you for your leadership on behalf of Wisconsin's working families and the education of the next generation. I'm Bobby Scott, ranking member in the Committee on Education and the Workforce, and we've heard this morning of the multi-pension system is in significant distress, threatening the retirement security of millions of Americans. In fact, there are about 100 multi-employer pension funds, about 100 out of a total of 1,400 that are in severe financial distress and currently projected to be insolvent and have no assets within the next 20 years. More importantly, a few of these are very large plans, such as the Central States Teamsters Pension Fund, and they're projected to be insolvent even much more quickly. And if no action is taken, they're large enough to jeopardize the PBGC. And that's why I'm pleased to support the legislation introduced by Congressman Neal and Senator Brown, technically known as the Rehabilitation for Multi-Employer Pensions Act, but it's going to be better known as the Butch Lewis Act. The bill proposes a solution to prevent trouble in multi-employer plans from failing, and it safeguards retirees' hard-earned pensions. In the weeks ahead, we've got to work in a bipartisan fashion to responsibly address the multi-employer pension crisis. Millions of workers, their families, and retirees are counting on us, and the longer Congress waits to act, the more difficult and more expensive the crisis will be to solve, and that's simple arithmetic. And now it's my pleasure to turn over the mic to a champion for working families who has promoted better jobs, better wages, a better future, a better deal, the Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here. It is a special occasion indeed because we are here to fulfill our purpose, and our purpose is to meet the needs of the American people. Mike has on his shirt, "Broken promises make broken lives." That is something that we have to dispel, and this legislation will do that. Now, you've heard the particulars of the bill. You've heard the commitment of our colleagues. You heard what Rita had to say. Wouldn't Butch be proud of Rita today? And wouldn't he be happy that Mike Walden is here to be with us today? Thank you, Mike, very much. And I know he would be very happy to see his family here, his grandchildren. This is about the future. It's about family, it's about the future, and it's about our country. We're very proud that Sherrod Brown and Senator Baldwin are two veterans of the House of Representatives. We take great pride in their leadership in the United States Senate on issues that relate to America's working families. They are in the lead. I'm especially also pleased, you heard from Cheri Bustos at the beginning. Cheri's one of the co-chairs of our communications and helped develop an economic message, a better deal, better jobs, better pay, a better future. And within that better deal is our commitment to repairing the pension system. Thank you, Cheri Bustos, for your leadership in that regard. Four other heroes are here with us as well. Reference has already been made to the great leadership on this and other subjects of Marcy Kaptur of Ohio, may I say. Debbie Dingell, who has the largest number of pensioners in her district. Thank you, Debbie Dingell. A person who's kind of been our navigator through all of this from New Jersey, Donald Norcross. Thank you, Donald, for your leadership. And from the Iron Range of Minnesota, person who delivers this message at home and in the caucus, a once and future member of Congress and now an ongoing, he was here before and he came back again. The fight was within him, Rick Nolan. Thank you. When I asked Richie to take up this responsibility, I had only 2 words of instruction to him, or suggestion, shall we say. No cuts. Yeah. No cuts, no cuts, no cuts, no cuts. No cuts, no cuts, no cuts. And he and Bobby Scott, and we're so proud of Bobby's work on all this. He and Bobby Scott, their committee, shared jurisdiction, worked together to bring us to where we are today. And again, it is a great day. I'm just going to share a little personal story because my mine worker friends who are here have been to my office many times, and they see my friend that sits with me in the office. Oh. Yeah. So, and this mine worker. My father served in Congress. My father served in Congress from Maryland in the 30s and 40s, a New Deal. long before I came to Congress, 50 years before I came to Congress, from Maryland, a different state with a different name, Thomas D'Alessandro. And when I became a member of Congress, he brought me one thing from his office, our friend, the mine worker. And it wasn't just about being a mine worker, it was a worker. And he said, this is what our purpose is. It was for him in public service. This is your purpose. And this is our daily reminder, not just a reminder, we don't need it, but inspiration. So when these mine workers came, we were fighting for the health benefits. Remember that fight? Okay, we got through that, but not the pension. And the Teamsters and the confectioners, the list goes on and on among the workers whose pensions are threatened. This is our purpose. Promises made, promises must be kept, but it's not only that. It's promises owed. This is money that you put into the system. This is an immorality. So this guy is no stranger to my mine worker friends who come by quite a bit in this fight. But it is, I think, I know I can say without any exception, it is the commitment of the House Democrats to America's working families. And we believe that there are enough Republicans who would join us, because nothing is more eloquent to a member of Congress than the voice of his or her own constituents. You have to call, you have to say, as Richie said, there's a path. As Bobby laid out, there is a plan. As Senator Baldwin and Senator Brown put forth, there is consensus and unity on all of this. We want to get this done as soon as possible, and we want to get it done with no cuts. Thank you all very much. Actually, we enjoyed so much of each other's company, and isn't it wonderful? Again, this is about the future, to see Butch's grandchildren, Rita's grandchildren here. You're lucky, Rita, your grandchildren are here today. Right then. So we are actually in the closing debate on the floor of the House now on this abomination of a tax bill. So some of us are going to have to go to the floor, but if anyone had a question, we'd be pleased to take it. Any questions? No? Okay.
How does this differ from Senator Manchin and Senator Capito's bill? Talk about the broadness of it, if you would.
And you were talking about the part of it that is about the mine workers?
Senator Manchin and Senator Capito have a bill that would address the UMWA's pensions.
Yes, the mine workers piece of it, yeah.
This bill is comprehensive. It includes the mine workers, it includes the Teamsters, it includes anyone in multi-employer plans like this. It's written in a way that guarantees the pensions with no cuts. Not clear in some of these other bills. There was a bill that some unions were working with that would have faced 20% cuts. Our commitment, like Leader Pelosi's commitment in her instruction, and the same with Senator Schumer, is no cuts. We started with the whole idea of no cuts. We are going to continue with sticking to that there would be no cuts in this pension. That's why we're doing the 30-year bonds. That's why we're doing the loans to the pension system. That's why we're not going to raid PBGC the way so many of these others would be. This is a plan that will work. This is a plan that will work to make sure there are no cuts.
And one of the guiding principles throughout all of this is that whatever path this bill took, that the mine workers were included every step of the way. So it's a broader bill. I just want to, in closing, thank all of you for coming. Again, reiterate what Sherrod Brown said earlier about the distinguished Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer. They're fighting the fight in committee over there on the health care bill, as well as we have to deal with caps and all kinds of other subjects right now. So I'm holding down the fort here. He's holding it down there. But his commitment to this legislation, the Butch Lewis bill, is total. As Sherrod said earlier in our meeting last week, he was fully committed, on board, and impatient to get moving with it all. So let us thank Chuck Schumer for his leadership on all of this as well. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for joining us. I neglected to mention Congressman Norcross is a card-carrying union electrician. So I just thought I would throw that in. And he's been a real leader. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. Go out and do what you need to do to get these votes. Thank you, everybody.
I just, very quickly, I want to thank everybody, and I met Mike Walden in February 2015, and it has been an honor and a privilege to get behind this man and lead this fight, and we will take it to the end. We will be victorious, and thank you, veterans. Thank you all.
Nobody's worked harder than this on this than Mike Walden has. Nobody. So, thank you. Thanks, everybody.